All right, everybody, welcome to this special edition, a first ever Aquarian Anarchy movie review. Got my man Jay Pilon. I've seen you do movie reviews with Canon Hotep, and y'all done your thing. I'm really interested to hear your perspective because seeing some of the stuff that you've done with numerology, gematria, and that sort of stuff, and then also some of your digging into some of the symbolism stuff that you did when you were on with Uncle Hotep. Like, I just wanted to get your perspective on this new movie that just came out, like, I don't know, a few weeks ago, Spiderhead on Netflix. So we're going to get into that. But first, welcome to Aquarian Anarchy. How you doing?
Appreciate you, Chad. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been. I think I've watched about 5,000 movies, TV shows,
That's it.
somewhere in that neighborhood. It could be higher.
Yeah.
It's a lot of just a lot of television and film since I was little, and a lot of studying and research.
Yeah, word. So I'm maybe not, my numbers aren't that big, but I think I've put in my time in front of the tube and in front of the movie screen. So I got, and I don't know how old you are. I'm 48, so like I've had quite a bit of time to put some movies and some TV shows under my belt.
Okay.
But I'm interested to hear because you've seen so much stuff, and I don't really want to get into as much the quality of the movie because I think there are a lot of people who have like some valid criticisms for some of the stuff being a little on the nose and just being a little bit, kind of hokey or goofy or whatever. What I wanted to talk about is like what I see as like predictive programming,
Mhm.
like sort of I don't know, in a way, almost like a revelation of like, hey, yeah, this is what we've been doing, this sort of thing, and dig into that because this movie is a trip when you think of it in the context of not just the MK Ultra type shit and all the different chemicals that they use to try to experiment on those people and how they conducted those experiments, but also like the last 2 years and how manufactured consent, that's the biggest part of it that was a takeaway for me, is manufactured consent with threats, even if they're not honest threats. And if you don't ask the right questions about those threats, you think those threats are legitimate. And then they say, well, the only way you can avoid this threat is if you acquiesce to something.
Mhm.
And then the people just say, all right, yeah, acknowledge.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was a decent, right. It was a decent film, and I know one of my takeaways from it was how they had everything color coded. Right, they had
Mm-hmm.
the what was it called? They had unusual names for it, but we found out
Yeah.
that those are picked off of a bingo card, so they came at random.
Right.
Right, it
Right.
was
Right.
what was the love drug, and then they
Love
numerically did
Acting. I got it. Hang on just
love
a second.
acting.
I got it. I got it right here. So there's Love Acting on the
Right,
screen.
N you get the
N40.
N40.
N40 from the bingo card, and it was in green for that was the Love Acting, and then they had the or was it blue?
Blue, I believe.
It's like a
Right.
light blue or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
So and then they had what was the other one?
the
They had Love
dark
Acting. They
the
had the Darkened
darkened
Flocks.
flocks was,
Yeah,
I don't know what color was that. Was it the dark
that was
the darker
red, wasn't
color?
it? Was that,
Was it red?
or was it black? It was
It's
black.
hard. Okay, was it a black color? Yeah, it was
Red
interesting
was
how
the
they did
red was the
everything.
other one. Red was the B, whatever, the obedient, whatever. When
Right. So they were all from the get go. They were all uh, f- put into this prison penitentiary,
mm-hmm.
and they were placed under these drugs in order to um, keep them obedient. But however, the prisoners in this facility, the Spiderhead penitentiary, they didn't realize that they were under the influence of an obedience drug. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of think it goes back to the whole debate over the fluoride, right?
Right.
And what goes into your system, and how you could fall under the control of suggestion. And we had the character of Chris. It was Chris Hemsworth, his name, correct? And he was playing the part of Steven, I guess. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he was his the way he carried himself was was with constant amount of suggestion, right? He was the influencer in the room,
Very
and where
charismatic.
right, and where other figures, right, where you have the cult of celebrity, right? You
Yep.
fall under his suggestion because he says, "Hey," he comes across as like he's your buddy. in like Winston, between Winston and O'Brien in the 1984 story. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
You go back to that and you think, okay, so he's your pal. So you're coming under the influence of him and his tutelage, and him suggesting to you to keep going with these experiments, and they're getting worse and worse, rather than these people, saying, hey, stop from the get-go. Because now they're, like in the earlier scenes in the film, they're forced to mate with one another, even though they don't have any physical or emotional ties to one another.
Some of that's pretty, like, some pretty horrific shit that they get you attracted to with the love acting,
Right.
making you artificially attracted to this person. They had that one chick, she was like a meth head. The other dude was like the Hulk or something,
Right.
with all tatted out
he
and
had
everything.
tattoos all over his face.
His name was Rogan too, which I thought was funny that they chose to name him Rogan.
Oh, because because his hair loss on top of his head or something like that, and he was a big swole guy.
I guess so.
Was there? And then they had, they had the wasn't that Juicy Smollett's
his sister.
Yeah, she was the Lizzie, the love interest in the film for
right.
Miles Tanner. And I think that it was a little bit like a couple different movies. We had this scenario that played out in a similar scenario to this in other films, such as The Manchurian Candidate, both the newer updated version with Denzel Washington, as well as the original that featured Frank Sinatra and I believe Angela Lansbury.
Yeah.
And that film, the original Manchurian Candidate, was released around the time of the JFK event, and so they pulled it from the theaters, and it wasn't shown to the public until years later. I believe only a few critics or a few individuals got to watch the original one, and that dealt into the subject matter of because in the beginning of the Manchurian Candidate, you have the figures that are over there, I believe in some part of Asia, and they're being controlled and being weaponized against each other, and around them they see these flowers. And I thought another interesting part is that it's like botanical, right? They're getting this. Where are they getting these from? They're mixing it with the botanicals. They're mixing it with naturals, but it's also pharmaceuticals,
right?
And excuse me, we saw something similar in that animated film Zootopia, where they had the little blue flowers that they were utilizing. Those were the psychotropics in that film. And then let me get a drink.
And then, man. I didn't think about Zootopia, but you're dead on. They had the little it was almost like some deadly nightshade or something like that, but it would make them go wild, and that's where they were. Wasn't that what it was causing them to do? Were they murdering people, or were they just
in
Zootopia?
So in Zootopia, they were under the psychotropics that they were taking, that were coming from these little blue flowers. And the little blue flowers that we also saw in the Philip K. Dick story as well, which I believe had the Keanu Reeves in it. You recall that title? It was the animated film with Keanu Reeves, where they were also under psychotropic drugs and they were also little blue flowers as well.
No, I don't remember that one. So you've watched more movies than I have, apparently. So I don't recall that one.
Let me see. Scanner Darkly. It just came to me. Scanner Darkly was the other film.
Yeah, okay.
I believe it came out in 2004, 2005.
Some of that, yeah.
So the pharmaceutical companies were going over to natural botanicals, but then producing chemical altering drugs, stimulants, etc., to utilize on people to create their or alter their perception of things. And so when in Zootopia the animals came under that psychotropic, they began to attack others, and then they reverted back to their wild sides.
Their animal instincts.
Their animal instincts took over because they were like humanoids in the film in Zootopia.
Yeah.
But then that switched up.
Okay. Yeah. So to take it back to like this, how the experiments were were conducted and everything, seems like it wasn't just about how those drugs themselves affected the person on the other side of the glass. It almost had like a Milgram experiment component of it too, right? Where you actually had the Hemsworth character Steven like getting some of the patients, some of the prisoners, inmates, whatever, to actually conduct these experiments. And he had I guess it was his partner, but his partner was kind of imprisoned by the whole thing too, right? Like he was, like you said, he was under that power of the charisma of the celebrity, but he was still not necessarily, doing it of his own free will. He was being very, very heavily coerced to do some stuff that I think rubbed him the wrong way. And then you saw that with the Miles Teller helper, character, right? Where he was,
and also the lab helper.
The lab helper first was not digging it, but then definitely Miles Teller's character was not down, especially because he had developed relationships with some of these people, and so then that's where they took it to the final notch, where they're like, all right, now you're going to do this stuff to her, like you're going to have to do it to the girl that you actually like.
Yeah. Oh, and then because he said, I have neither one is my preference, right? But that's because so they were under that obedience off the bat, so that was hard. So it's hard, so they couldn't really. It must have been so strong that they really couldn't even gather up the regular human emotion that you would have if someone kept telling you, okay, do this, do that, do this, the other thingy. We would just be like, hey, buzz off. I'm not gonna do it, right? Especially the guy that you see that they had the Rogan character that was all huge and already mad. He came in there already saying, hey, leave me alone, F you, this and that. His personality wouldn't go for any of that. But then here they are in this low security. It doesn't seem to have any security guards. They're not worried about any of these people just because they're under this almost it's basically like hypnosis, right? They're under the guise of these controlling drugs, and then we saw with the Steven character, though, he had the euphoria going, right? When he put the pack on himself and started to experience those psychotropics, he began to feel the euphoria effect of it all.
Yeah, and he had the one that was like it would make you laugh uncontrollably, that he would use on himself and on some of the other people, and they had that moment with him and Teller where he's and I can't remember Miles Teller's name in the movie, but anyway, where they were sitting
Jeff,
there just kind of,
wasn't it Jeff?
Yeah, I think so. Where they're sitting there laughing about their the most horrible thing that ever happened to them. They're just cracking up laughing about it. It's the other thing too that was interesting is the way that they used like guilt, and I feel like so often, to me, it was very revealing. Like they were showing you a window into like, yeah, we've actually done this kind of stuff to people. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna make you do it. But in those cases, I think what it is that they actually get these people to do some really horrible stuff,
right? And
then they hold it against them, and that's like the thing that they dangle over their head. They're like, because we're gonna let everybody know this.
Yeah,
if
because
you don't keep going along.
Unlike in those other things where there was a hypnotic suggestion that they were blocking out this stuff, they actually could slightly remember it. It might be hazy because they wanted to try to push it to the back of their mind, but they still remember the feelings, and they still remember some emotions, the emotions and some of the event that took place. If they really wanted to recall it, it seemed like they could. It's just that because it was so awful, they were like, oh, let me put. Let me
compartmentalized it very much. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's like, oh man, what did I do? But it was like they're out of control. They're out of control in those situations just because of the mechanism, the mechanics of this botanical in their system.
So one of the things that stood out to me is my wife and I were watching, and I was like, this is in the sense of some of it was revelation of what a lot of people know happens, and we get called all kind of names for knowing that this stuff happens, and then there's a lot of other people who don't know, and then there's some people who've heard, but they're kind of like, yeah, that's bullshit. And this was kind of like a revelation of like, no, this is So either this is a fictitious, rendition of what people say happens, and it's still not true, or you should still be, doubtful of it,
Right.
or hey, we're telling you that we actually do this stuff. Either way, what I also saw it as is a bit of predictive programming of like, hey, look, as this goes, you're about to start finding out. As we saw, there's a PubMed article that was released yesterday or the day before, showing like that there are people like, this is a peer reviewed published study on PubMed saying that like, these we should not be recommending these boosters. So you got that, and then you have this other thing coming out where like, huh?
I said T-Mobiles.
Yes, the T-Mobiles, exactly. But the other one is that one of the manufacturers is talking about this, trying to pull stuff off of a suit, so because they or pull a suit back because the government knew that there was fraud involved. It's like, whoa, wow. Yo, all right, really? Okay, so some of this stuff is starting to be revealed, and it's almost like they're telling you like, hey, as you find this stuff out, you're going to find out that like you can either keep going along with it, and you can keep, and the next thing that comes, you can go along with that too, or the answer is to just say no, and right. to just like resist it, and to push back, and to ask the questions, and not submit to it, because that's ultimately how they gave you the pathway, I guess is what I'm saying, out of this to a certain degree. But what they also did to me was they showed one of the things that's like the biggest problem with where we are worldwide culturally, is that people, I think, struggle a lot with the ability to forgive themselves.
Oh yeah.
And you've seen the stuff that I've been doing with my daily meditation and stuff, and I've seen some of the stuff that you've said about like how people need to move in the world, that sometimes it may give you a warm and fuzzy to dunk on the left, or to dunk on your opponents or whatever, but it's not the way to actually heal what needs to be healed and to solve these problems.
Right.
So that was interesting to me, because you saw how the people who actually become the heroes, who were the protagonists all along, but you weren't quite sure how it would play out until you finally saw, the escape at the end.
Yeah.
One of the big things that they do with
Lizzie and Jeff.
Yeah. One of the big things that you saw that was part of their pathway out was their ability to offer forgiveness to each other and to accept it for themselves.
Right. Well, we say, how can we overcome our limitations of self? We could start by practicing walking in love and forgiveness, and that starts with forgiveness of oneself, and then offering that to others. Because if I'm online and I scroll through my chat, or I'm in my Twitter, like you said, and you come at me and you're greeting me with slurs, or you're cursing at me, then for me, for anyone, it would be easier to give into a lower vibration. Mm-hmm. But it's more in the positive direction to continue to ignore them and keep it pushing. And for all you know, that person could be a great person.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't get to find that out, right? And you wouldn't get to find that out either if someone's coming at you sideways, mm-hmm. and calling you crazy names. Then you wouldn't want anything to do with them. But then you would want to, if you're going to accept forgiving others and then walking in love, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to utilize this moment to keep my peace. And even by doing that, that plants a seed in others. It was, mm-hmm. like we said, the compartmentalization. If we go back, mm-hmm. to that, sure, a normie might say, that's crazy stuff, right?
Right.
It's already been planted, the seed. And mm-hmm. years later, when that information comes out that validates everything that the truth speaker was saying, they knew that all along. Mm-hmm. It's just like in the chats right now, when you look and you read, excuse me, I'm getting parts. When you read in the chats, and they say, what did they say? Oh, we watched that commercial earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, this isn't the 1960s. We don't have on hoods anymore, right? The leftists were saying that.
Mm.
What have they been saying all along? They've been denying their past all along. Mm. Today, they said, no, that was back then. So there always is that people have that realization between what's the reality, and what's the compartmentalization. What do they? What I'm gonna put on my blockers, pretend I don't see this, so I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think also to your point about when you're having those interactions, and if you lead with love and compassion, and you are not just dunking on them for the sake of dunking on them so that your friends and your followers can high five you, like, yeah, look at that, you see that, I kicked him, knocked him over, then I pissed on him, like if you don't, if that's the interaction, even as the stuff is revealed, their response to that revelation is still going to be pushback,
right,
and denial because of that interaction. Whereas if that interaction is more compassionate and bridge building, even though you are diametrically opposed on your viewpoints on the topic, seeing that you are coming at it with the proper intentions, and that while you disagree, your heart's in the right place and you're not trying to be an asshole about it.
Yeah, facts. Yeah.
When that revelation happens, they're like, wow, man, I should have listened, because he was really trying to be nice and he was trying to help me. And I was, the one being a dick, it's all, sometimes that stuff is very, it's very easy to fall into those traps. And I fall into them all the time too. Like it's hard, man. It's very tempting,
like,
especially when you see this stuff on the timeline,
you got a temper, right?
Yeah, I got a little bit of a temper.
So
my wife and kids could tell you, like I get impatient sometimes. So
right. It's easy to love your significant other. You love your family, but love is also forgiving, and love of others as you have love for yourself, or forgiveness of yourself is also important. It's also key, because like in I guess in our society, we everyone is like they're drunk, right? We go back to the emotions that they had in that film. Steven's coping with his coping mechanism is to feel the euphoria. He's getting drunk. So I mean, people nowadays, what if you don't have an alcohol problem? There's a lot of people that are drunk off of the taste of likes and follows via social media.
Dopamine.
So in turn, those are validations of self that they lack in their personal relationships between themselves, between God, between their wife, their spouse, their significant other, and they're having those fulfilled in an artificial space. So that's much like alcohol, much like a drug. It's that social media that can erase your, I want to say, inhibitions. It erases your inhibitions. So suddenly you're typing stuff that you may not otherwise do.
Especially not in person.
Right. You might not ever speak that way to another human being face to face. But suddenly you're saying or texting things you would ever otherwise never consider doing so in person. In all my days, I don't recall people walking up to me with derogatory statements. But they're quick to do it online. But I just keep it moving. I don't argue with the strangers, like HJ said.
That's right. Oh shoot, yeah, it's and it's tough. It's tempting, and I've had some of those where because there's also the grifty block can be fun and entertaining for the audience as well, but ultimately, now there's some times where I will quietly block people because I know that just based on, like, for instance, there's this thing with the you've seen that there's this new account that just started up a few weeks ago, maybe this Gays Against Groomers thing or whatever, have you seen that?
Vaguely.
Whole new Twitter account that they just started like 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago.
Right.
But anyway, there are tons of people coming at them in the comments, and like all I did one time was I think I had said something. I like replied to one of their tweets one time, and bro, I had the Rainbow Mafia all up in my mentions, and I just had to start hitting the block button because I was like, you know what, like, you don't need to see my timeline because there's probably some stuff I've said in there that's like that y'all are going to go like mass report me for or whatever. And it's not even stuff where it's bad. I got mass reported for one where some chick was arguing with me that me voting for Kanye was like was going to somehow, like, I was going to be responsible for Trump getting elected or whatever. And I was like, how is me voting for neither Trump nor Biden? Neither one of those guys deserve, I don't owe either one of them my vote. So me voting for a third person has no impact on how many votes they get, because I wasn't voting for either of them anyway. I don't know how, but for some reason, she and like a bunch of her cronies, they like mass reported me to Twitter, and I got dinged for election. What was it? Some like election misinformation or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, what? So sometimes you got to be careful, because the crazy people they'll just do crazy stuff to you, even if you don't deserve it. So sometimes I block out of precaution, but I do occasionally block people with the Hotep Jesus special of, like, use whatever words they used against you and be like, well, you're going to understand this block, or whatever, whatever kind of nonsense. So it's tempting, because that stuff, it feels good. Like you get that little rush of dopamine, but it ain't right. It's not the way to move in the world.
Right. I guess it's easier to give into one emotion than to give into or to walk in love, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I can hear that bedtime is calling over there. So
the babies are ready.
Yeah, we won't keep you any longer. But so what would you say in terms of like your view on this movie? Like, would you recommend it to the folks who haven't seen it yet, or do you think it's good enough?
Okay, big man. Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend it, because it's not that good.
It's not that good. All right.
You could watch plenty of other films, like the original Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
Or it's interesting entertainment, but it's not done along the lines of any of the other productions out there. So.
No, right. No, it was more about, I wanted to kind of talk about what we saw imagery wise and messaging wise or whatever. But anyway, all right. So you got kids popping in. I don't want to keep you any longer. I appreciate you coming on, Jay. Thank you so much. Tell them I said good night. Y'all have a good one. Peace,
all right,
bro.
Thank you.
All right, man. Yeah, so appreciate Jay coming on tonight. He's got so much knowledge in the in watching films, watching TV shows, and everything. And he's got a really good perspective. Brings the imagery, all that hidden messaging, occult messaging, and everything, and like gematria, numerology. But then he's also a good Christian man who brings that to the table as well. So I wanted to kind of have him on to vibe on that with me, to talk about this movie, because my wife and I just finished watching it last night, and I was just like, okay, I kind of want to talk about this movie because there's a lot of stuff going on. And you saw the stuff with the Georgia Guidestones coming down today, and there's so much of this stuff where, like, I feel like we're seeing some of the cracks in the armor, and I think that's where we were headed. We were seeing some of those cracks start to develop 3 years ago, and so that's kind of why they had to get the Flex Seal out and start patching the holes. And I still think some of the little revelations are leaking out, and they're letting us see it, because part of this thing is this stuff has to be done where, like, as you saw, if you do watch the movie Spiderhead, there's a lot of this stuff where you have to know what's happening in a certain way, so that from an ethical standpoint, they're just like, well, no, look, we let them know what was going on. They were free to leave. They could have walked out the door, but they chose not to. Or we asked them and we never administered any of these drugs unless they said yes, put whatever bingo number drug into my system. They would always say acknowledge, and that's how they would get it pumped into them. So it's very similar to what we've seen over these last couple of years, right? Or at least the last year and a half since the magic medicine was available. It was, hey, you have to do this, otherwise you're going to lose your job. You have to do this, otherwise you can't go to school, you can't go to this, you can't go on your cruise, you can't get on a plane, you can't go to this sporting event, concert, whatever, right? And so people were like, all right, go ahead, put it in, you know, it's Paulus. But they were coerced. But the authorities, the people who were administering this stuff or who were mandating it, can very easily say, no, but we didn't force them. We told them they had to. Just like if you see the movie, you know, it's like, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to be in the state penitentiary for 7 years. But if you do this that we ask you to do, hey, we might be able to send you back home. You might be able to walk free in whatever time. And then you find out later that, you know, at the end of the movie. So spoilers throughout this thing. If you're watching this review and you got to this point, I don't even need to alert you of spoilers. But at the end of the movie, they find out that they've been either already free to go for like weeks or months, or they're almost free to go. What up, Cannon? I see you. And so when you think about it from that standpoint, there's so much of that's true. Like there, for instance, I'm in Louisiana. All right, there's a law where, or there's a bill that we tried to get passed in the state legislature that would require the schools and employers to let their employees and the students know that they could file for an exemption from the you know what. The governor, well, let's see. Actually, I can't remember if the legislature voted that one down, or if the governor vetoed it after the legislature passed it. But either way, it did not go into law. So, and think about that. All we're asking is, hey, these exemptions exist already. Just let them know that they can file for an exemption. And they're like, nah, we're not doing that. They've got to find out for themselves. So now it's on us to spread the word and try to make as many people know. So similarly to Spiderhead, all they had to do was say, no, I'm not doing it. And they wouldn't have to do it. But they were the marketing, like Jay was saying earlier, that charismatic, that cult of celebrity was so strong that you couldn't not do it because you felt compelled to, or you at least felt enticed to. And that's what I got out of this, was watching this, what's gone on in the last couple of years, especially the last year and a half. But even before that, like the masks and the lockdowns and all that stuff was another part of this dramatic reveal of the kind of the mask coming off, that like, hey, yeah, we're tyrants and we've always been tyrants. We have wanted to manipulate and control and imprison you and enslave you. And we almost had you, but you started to wake up. So we had to bring out the big guns. That's kind of the way I saw this, this last year and a half to 2 years, or 2.5 years. And this movie was a great window into that. And so anyway, I appreciate y'all coming out and checking this out. Hopefully everybody will get a chance to see this and maybe give your thoughts in the comments on what you thought if you saw Spiderhead, and if you kind of felt the same way that Jay and I did about this, about all of the different ways that it kind of embodies the human experience right now, from forgiveness and pointing your ambitions in the right directions, versus some of this manipulation and control and that manufactured consent that is practically required. And, you know, like we were saying, that it's almost like they have to let you know some of it, so that you can't say that there wasn't an opportunity for you to know. All the crazy conspiracy theorists were out there telling you. So if you didn't listen, hey, that's on you. Maybe they weren't crazy. That's kind of how this stuff goes down. So don't ever say that Hotep's didn't tell you, because Hotep's been told you. And with that, I'm going to bounce. Peace, y'all. Appreciate y'all coming out. Aquarian Anarchy out of here. Good night.